I barely opened my eyes and looked around. My eyelids seemed to be filled with wet sand. I saw the cold hospital walls and doctors standing over me and discussing something vigorously. One of the doctors opened the door to the ward and said to someone, "She is conscious." My parents immediately ran into the room. Mom rushed to me and wanted to hug me, but the doctor stopped her. "She's still too weak." I tried to remember what had happened and why I was in the hospital. I think I lost consciousness. And judging by how happy everyone is, and I was able to wake up, now I'm fine. Back then, I didn't know how my life would change very soon. Hi, my name is Bridget. You may not believe me, but I'm charging from electricity. My story didn't start in the hospital, but much earlier. I have been playing football for a long time and was one of the most promising players on the team. I just loved football. I felt real freedom only in those moments when I was running across the field and felt my heart pounding furiously. I even got an athletic scholarship in college and dreamed of pursuing an athletic career. However, fate decreed otherwise, disrupting my plans. We were losing by a few points that day, and the coach finally decided to let me out to fix it. When I entered the field, I deftly caught a pass and ran into the zone of the Tigers, the opposing team. The nimble girl appeared in front of me as if out of the ground. I had never seen her on the team before, but I quickly realized that she was a defender. Not having time to jump to the side, I crashed into the girl, lost my balance, and fell, having managed, at the same time, to reliably cover the ball with myself so that the opponent did not get it. I immediately felt the other Tigers players pouncing on me. It was so hard, as if an elephant had fallen on me. A sharp pain pierced my chest. My eyes darkened, and I lost consciousness. That's all I remember. I came to my senses only on the way to the hospital. After examining and taking all the necessary tests, the doctors told my terrified parents that I had suffered cardiac arrest. He said that this is very serious and that my heart can stop again at any time, so a transplant was urgently needed. My parents were shocked. To be honest, I was no less surprised. The doctor explained that any surgical intervention in the body is a risk, especially such a serious one. "Let us think," my mother asked the doctor. He nodded in understanding and suddenly turned to me. "Forget about physical exertion." "Why?" "Your heart isn't as strong as it used to be." A few days later, I went to school. At one of the lessons, thinking, I looked out the window, and the first thing that caught my eye was the football field. Frankly, I was incredibly bored in class. Everything I could and wanted to do was related to football. Therefore, after classes, I immediately went to see how my team was training. I went up to my friends, Sarah and Lena. "And here is our champion!" Sarah exclaimed happily. "It took almost the entire Tigers team to stop our Bree," Lena smiled at me. "Why aren't you in uniform? We have a training session." "I'll probably skip today. I need to gain strength." "You're our wide receiver. Or do you lack the stomach to take my serve?" Lena hurt my ego. Sports anger started playing in me. So I accepted her challenge before I remembered the doctor's words. Easy as pissing. I dashed towards the field. Lena threw the ball very hard. That's why I had to try to catch it. I jumped. A moment later, the ball was in my hands. The guys from my team shouted, "Keep it up, champion!" I didn't hear any of them. Sharp pain in my chest took me by surprise. I collapsed to the ground with the ball in my hands. So I was back in the hospital where I started my story. As the doctor warned, my heart couldn't stand the sprint. The doctors didn't have time to wait for a new heart, and there was no choice. Therefore, it was decided to put a pacemaker that would temporarily replace my own heart. The operation was successful. At least in some ways, I was lucky. I had to stay in the hospital for a very long time. The doctors were afraid that I would not recover well enough, and all their labors would go to waste. Fearing that his words would fall on deaf ears again, the head doctor tried to convince me to be more careful. "Your artificial heart is a very fragile instrument. Do not allow overloads. Monitor the condition of the device. Check the battery charge." He showed me a small box with a bright green light on it. It's strange that my life depends on this box. "The battery should not flash red. This means that it is about to discharge. In this case, you urgently need to connect it to a power source. The battery should never be overloaded. Please take all this very seriously. We gave you a second chance. Don't be silly." After the doctor's instructions, I was finally able to go home. It seemed that the artificial heart was working just enough so that I could breathe, move slowly, and eat. It's so strange to feel so weak as a young girl. Another disadvantage was that there always had to be an outlet next to me. I felt like an old smartphone discharging at the speed of light. To move faster, I asked my parents for their car. I was coming home late one night and my Toyota decided to stall. There were still about 8 miles to go. There was no question of walking this distance. I tried to start the engine, but to no avail. The car showed no signs of life. And then I heard a characteristic beeping. The battery. That's when I got really scared. I opened my bag and stared at horror at the red flashing light. The only thing I had in the car were wires, the ones that you can start your car with from another one. What if the charge remaining in the battery of my car would be enough to recharge my pacemaker at least a little? Survival instinct overcame common sense. I opened the hood and with trembling hands began to fasten the wires. I tried to open the squeaking box, nervously flashing red light. Now I had the positive wire in my hand. I connected it with shaking hands. My body was pricked with hundreds of invisible needles, and my heart began to pound as fast as it didn't beat even during my fiercest attack on the football field. I felt such a huge surge of energy that I immediately jerked off and ran towards the house. I covered those 8 miles in 20 minutes without a break. At home, I was met by my surprised dad. "Where's the car?" "It broke down. I barely made it." My breathing was getting short, and I really managed to get tired. I struggled up to my room. Already there, I decided to check the battery. It was fully charged, as I was informed by a bright green indicator. Great. However, I noticed that the box, which until recently was white, turned black on one side. Apparently, this was the result of my experiments with electricity. Completely exhausted, I collapsed into bed and decided that I would deal with it tomorrow. The next day at school, I was sitting on a bench while our whole class was winding circles around the stadium. Sarah and Lena ran up to me. Our relationship had noticeably deteriorated. I was no longer a champion, so why would they be friends with me? "Look, our former champion," Sarah giggled. "Why are you doing this?" Lena feigned sympathy. "She's a cripple. This cripple will overtake you in a blink of an eye," I said. "Do you want to bet $50 who will run 200 meters faster? I will be happy to spend your 100 on something cool." Yes, I know what you're thinking. Bridget is completely crazy because she has been told so many times to be careful and take care of her pacemaker. And you're absolutely right. But I am an athlete to the core, and I am ready to prove it to anyone who dares to challenge me. Even at the cost of my life, I went to change. I wanted so much to prove to these upstarts that I am better. And then it dawned on me. I remembered the evening when the car stalled in the middle of the road, the red light, and the wires with which I recharged my heart. That's what will help me put Lena and Sarah in their place. I headed for the car. This time I did everything more confidently. When I returned to the stadium, Lena and Sarah were already warming up. "Ready to lose?" Lena asked sarcastically. I just grinned back. Our classmate Matt shouted, 3, 2, 1, go! And we took off. Already at the start, I broke away from my rivals a lot, and I managed to keep the lead until the finish. When I crossed the finish line, my heart was beating so hard that it seemed like it was about to jump out of my chest. Another 10 seconds passed, and Lena and Sarah joined me. "How did you do it?" "It's just that I'm better than you. Now give me the money." Lena handed me a 50, and suddenly she began to sniff. "It smells like burnt plastic." She pointed to my pocket. "Come to the city running competition this weekend," Sarah suggested, "if you're not scared, of course. At a long distance, we will definitely take you." I shrugged my shoulders. "Prepare the money." When I ran, competing with Lena and Sarah, for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. That's why I decided to take part in the competition. The weekend came. I was packing a bag for a running competition. My cell phone kept ringing. I wanted to answer, but I was already late. When I got to the stadium, I parked away from prying eyes and opened the hood to recharge my pacemaker. When the current started charging the battery, I felt like the Flash. Suddenly, a strong smell of burning hit my nose. I looked down and saw that the battery that powered my heart turned completely black. It was clear that this was a very bad sign. I made a promise to myself that I was doing this for the last time. At the stadium, I noticed Sarah and Lena. They were warming up. "We thought that you chickened out," Sarah smiled. "No, I was just running from home to warm up." 15 miles? Lena opened her mouth in surprise. "I know it's not enough, but I'm still recovering." I winked at the girls. We prepared to run, dropping to a low start. A shot rang out. We rushed forward. I immediately broke away from the girls, but less than 5 minutes later, I felt like my legs were numb, my head was spinning, and I felt like I was about to fall. And that's what happened. I collapsed. However, instead of a hard track, I landed right in Lena's arms. She was shouting something, like she asked someone to call 911. Her worried face was the last thing I saw before I passed out. I came to my senses again already in the hospital. My doctor friend stood over me and shook his head in accusation. The day I didn't pick up the phone, he was the one who called me. The doctor wanted to tell me that they finally found a new heart for me, which was very useful because with my constant recharging, I disabled my pacemaker. My parents entered the ward. I noticed my mother's face was tear-stained and Dad was unusually serious. He said, "Promise me that you will take care of your new heart, sweetheart." I promise. After that, Mom rushed to hug me and the doctor didn't stop her this time. It took me a long time to recover and get used to the new heart. I didn't go back to sports anymore. Instead, I became interested in drawing, and I freaking love it. And what stupid things have you done in your life? Write in the comments. And don't forget to like this video.